And welcome to Life on Lisbonard Street. I'm Rebecca Jones and I'm delighted to be here with the cast and company of A Little Life. I first read the novel back in 2015 when it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and as part of my role as the BBC's arts correspondent, I interviewed all the authors shortlisted for the prize, including Hanya Yanagihara, who is here with us. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, Hanya, but I did ask you if you felt that the book could be a film, and you said you didn't think it could exist as a film, but that you did think it might be able to exist as a TV miniseries, but who knew it would exist as a play first. Enough from me. What I want to do now is get everybody here to just introduce themselves. So, Hanya, let's kick off with you.
Hanya Yanagihara, and I'm the author of the original text.
James, and I'm playing Jude St. Francis.
I'm Luke, and I'm playing Willem.
This is like drama school. I'm Zubin. I'm Zubin, and I'm playing Harold.
I'm Emilio, and I play Andy, who's Jude's doctor.
I'm Zach, and I'm playing Malcolm.
I'm Omari, and I'm playing JB.
Elliot, and I'm playing all the bad men in Jude's life.
Three of them.
Three of them.
I'm Nathalie, and I'm playing Anna.
Brilliant. Well, look, what we're here to do today is we're here to celebrate the anniversary of the original publication, discuss the book, and hear about the preparations of bringing it to the stage, and asking all the questions that we have received from fans from around the world. So thank you for those. So let's get cracking. And James, I'm going to start with you, but others will have thoughts, I'm sure. This book touched the lives of so many people. So many people love this book. I wonder how much pressure, therefore, you feel in bringing it to the stage.
It's a wonderful privilege to be a part of this production, and the reason is because of the number of people who have, as you say, loved this book and been so affected by it. It has sort of a double effect. One, of course, it's terrifying because there is a lot of expectation and people have very clear versions of these characters and the world, and they went through something. I mean, and everyone goes through something when they read the book, whether they throw it across the room in fury and disgust, or mostly they cherish it and it moves them and changes them forever. And we're not trying to replicate it for everyone. Of course, it's our imprint, it's Evo's vision, it's Hanya's vision, and a kind of mix and wonderful melting of those two. But we also do want to try and protect the essence of your extraordinary piece of work, and so there is a huge responsibility there. And so, yeah, that is pressure, but it's the best type of pressure. Yeah,
has anybody else had a reaction when they've said, oh, I'm about to appear in A Little Life?
Yeah, I think, I remember when because the book came out in 2015, and there was a time where I was just getting on the tube, and it was just, you would see it everywhere. So it definitely feels like just part of our sort of cultural makeup of, like, obviously it's set in New York, but just feels like it just sort of bled into the city. You just see it everywhere. So yeah, I think for anyone who's sort of said to anyone, everyone knows it, even if they've not read the novel. So yeah, pressure.
I'd also say I think you can feel like you're a couple of steps ahead than you would be if no one really knew about it. Like, I think any play when it first opens, or the first moments of play, you can feel a sort of sense of, okay, so no one knows anything about this, clean slate, okay, slowly try and layer it. But here instead you've got this bed of, like, feeling, and people are, some people come to it full, and that's amazing. Yeah, as an actor, like, I feel like you get to lean, you want something like that to lean back on, to sort of like to sort of buoy you into that world. And so actually it's also it's double-edged, as you said. Like, I think it's pressure, but it's also a gift, because you just get to float on top of that rather than have to, like, I don't know what this is.
Do the heavy digging. James, you mentioned Evo. That's, of course, Ivo van Hove, who has directed and is adapting your book, Hanya. And I did wonder, though, how involved you've been in the whole process.
Technically, not at all. It's Ivo's adaptation, it's his vision, and it's the cast's, and it really does belong to them, as I told them each individually when I got the chance to meet with them before rehearsals began. And the reason I gave him the rights back in 2017, this is when the Dutch version came out, is because I knew his work and I admired it, and I knew he would have ideas. And we are kind of in this moment in Hollywood where books, by the way, are no longer called books, they're called IP, intellectual property, and people just buy them and keep them, and they don't really have a plan for them. But I think if anyone knows Ivo's work, you can look back at his other plays and see that he does something strange and revelatory and really singular with everything he buys, and adapts. So I have been lucky enough to observe, and I rewrote parts of the script to make it feel a little more American, and I nativized the English, but it really does belong to him and to these people who, just by dint of who they are and their personalities and how they interpret these roles, are going to make it into something different altogether.
And shall we have it on record that you're pretty happy with the casting?
I hate all of them. I cry every night. No. I did have a say in it, and I'm so honored. I mean, each one of these actors is so extraordinary on their own, and together, just watching them build intimacy with each other, watching them have chemistry with one another. It's getting to watch that in real time, how they figure out how they're going to convey a closeness of relationships or a menace in Elliot's case has been really thrilling. You just watch what they do, and it's really magical. It's like alchemy.
Talking about watching what you do, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about the rehearsal process?
At the moment, it feels quite relaxed to me, which I'm surprised by to a certain degree because of the content. Yeah. But it's relaxed, I think, in a good way, in that we're finding each other, as Hanya said. We're developing those relationships, and we've worked our way through very gradually through the entire play. And we're just about to start again from the beginning. And I'm sure now we'll start adding more colour, more layers.
And it's a slightly different process than I imagine that they went through with the Dutch production. More was being devised then, so we're interpreting and changing and we're reassessing things now, I guess, with Ivo. So it's that kind of process at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, Omari, you play the painter, JB. A question here. If you could say one thing to your character at the beginning of the story, what would it be?
Probably a lot of what these guys are saying to him, calm down. I guess without giving too much away, but I think as four friends who've essentially grown up together, they went to college together, you sort of see them at the beginning of their 30s, at the beginning of the play. So JB sort of holds a lot of ambition, and that leads him to success. But then I guess with that also comes difficulty. So I'd be prepare yourself for the tough stuff, because that's what he has to endure. Well, so does everyone.
That's good. Elliot, as you say, you play the three, more difficult characters in the book, shall we say. Brother Luke, Dr. Traylor and Caleb. Do you have a favourite quote from A Little Life, or a favourite, I'll let you have a bit more than that, a favourite passage perhaps, or a favourite idea?
I was always struck by how the book can take you from the darkest points of Jude's relationship and his childhood, and I would be suddenly with Jude in those scenes and those moments, and then but within that still was some beautiful, descriptive, but simple and accessible imagery of the greenhouse. And I can't remember the line as such, but I almost could hear the closing of the door behind Jude's back and Brother Luke's sort of leadership through that door, and it being a sort of point of no return for that character. And there's something so tranquil and beautiful about the images and the references in those moments of his childhood and the refuge he finds with Brother Luke and the simple tasks that they spend doing in a difficult early part of Jude's childhood. It's a simple image, and it's typical of Hanya's use of imagery language that kind of like is a sucker punch from nowhere, but with no high drama or melodrama, and that sits with me. And we've recently encountered that part of the play again, and I'm sort of, or that version of it in the play, And I think it holds as much weight in our moment as it does in the original novel. So.
And I'd love to know, as cast members, what is it like having the writer here? I mean, do you find yourselves asking questions?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Give me a sense.
Hanya was being very modest earlier, saying that she's not really involved, because she is. She's both involved in the script, but also has met every one of us multiple occasions, and I don't know, for me personally, it's been invaluable. I mean, when I said to Eva, because usually you work with the director, and one of the first questions is, right at the beginning of the process, any references, films, books, movies, anything you want to guide me to, which might help. And Eva just said, the book.
It's all in the book.
It's all in the book, and it's true. And then, of course, having Hanya here to expand on that. I mean, we met in New York. We met on Zoom, and then we met in New York, and it was just. We spent 2 hours. I had to tear myself away to go and visit Lisbonard Street because I was just there for a morning. But it was so useful and valuable. And she is incredibly generous, not just in terms of giving us this book to then make our own, but also in terms of giving us enough guidance and steering without ever being kind of prescriptive.
You know, and you've got the fountainhead right there, as it were. You know, but also I remember when we met, what I found fascinating about our chat was that Hanya was so harsh on her characters. But when we talked about Harold, what she wanted to tell me about were his flaws. Even though essentially when you read that character, you think to yourself, this is a loving, compassionate human being who tries to support, who tries to bring love into people's lives. And that's absolutely true. But Hanya was like, he should have gone further. He should have tried harder. Which is wonderful, because you're talking about, that's an in-depth thing about characters, flaws that makes them much more human.
Because you always go in kind of wanting to like your character, and then to have it reassessed for you is extraordinary. She's told me Andy's a bad doctor, because he's not doing what...
Yeah, well, we did have this conversation, and I think it really speaks to the actor's intelligence and how deeply they thought about these roles. I mean, and I think for Willem too, who's often thought of as saint-like, you know, Luke and I talked about how Willem's great flaw is that he pretends constantly, that he pretends that things are going to be okay, that he pretends that Jude is not as damaged as he is. You know, if you're having sex with someone, you can tell if they're not enjoying it, and you know, and Willem chooses to overlook it. And I think there's a lot of characters who suffer from a fundamental lack of imagination. You know, I mean, I think Jude's one of them, and you know, and so is Willem. And I was saying to Zach, the one character who always sees Jude exactly as he is Malcolm, and Jude hates him for it, that he resents him for it, that, you know, when you look at the interventions that Malcolm makes in Jude's home to try to prepare for a future that Jude won't want to face, you know, Jude feels too seen by him, exposed by him, and becomes wary of him. But, you know, all of us need someone in our lives who sees us that clearly.
God, you're getting the most fantastic insights from the person who wrote it. It's amazing. I want to bring you in, Nathalie. Look, you are the only woman in the cast, clearly, but I know when I spoke to you, Hanya, back in 2015, you said you'd originally conceived the novel with no women in it at all, and you thought that was too artificial. Does my memory serve me correctly? Yeah. So fortunately for you, there is one woman in it. I mean, what is it like, though, being not the only woman in the cast, but the only woman in the story?
It's interesting. One of the things Hanya said to me when we met was that she poses no threat to Jude. She's the only character that poses no threat to him. She is consequently of no interest to him, I think, is what you said.
Well, I think he's more attracted to people who could damage him. And, you know, and the innovation of Anna in this was, I think, one of Ivo's most brilliant, because he takes a character who appears relatively briefly in the book, but who, and makes her and actualizes her into this character on stage who's not quite benevolent, but is benign, and is there sometimes as Jude's conscience, sometimes as his witness, sometimes as someone who is scolding him, and she plays a very complex role in his subconscious. And Nathalie, I think, it brings this really, you know, motherly energy to Jude, and you know, it's a play without mothers.
She can be an irritant to him, quite antagonistic. She can be like a fly, sort of buzzing in his ear, and he has a tendency to want to swat her away. But ultimately, she challenges him, and I think that's a testament to the way the character has been fleshed out in the play.
Well, there's a wonderful moment where the line, I was thinking about my answer to your question, Omari, which was, what line would you tell your character at the beginning of the play? And for Jude, it's a line Anna says, which is, if you allow it, the rest of your life will be blessed and you will meet good people, but you have to make that choice. And she is the one person who intervenes at the right moment and essentially gives him a chance. And so the whole story is basically premeditated or allowed for through her.
You're never quite sure, does she actually exist? And she is part of Jude's subconscious, but very real. There's the ghosts of of the various people who abused him, and there's the ghosts of the life he could have had, the choices he could have made. Anna says to him all the time, you have to learn how to speak. If you really want to be close to someone, you have to learn how to tell your story, and he cannot do it. And so this idea of the life he could have had, the person he could have been, if he was able to articulate what had happened to him, hangs over the entire play, I think. I mean, it's about a difficult life, and it's someone who has had, so much taken from him, and the things that he retains are the ability to love and be loved. And you can lose almost everything else in life, but if you hold on to those two qualities, you will have joy in your life. Yeah. But some people don't get to keep those, and Jude's very lucky that those two things weren't stripped from him.
Okay, Zach, you play the architect, Malcolm. Are there any specific details that perhaps you've brought to the character that perhaps weren't in the book?
The book is written too well.
Good answer.
I think, it's incredibly descriptive who Malcolm is, or at least who he wants to be. He has a massive struggle with his identity. And perhaps the reason why he's friends with the friends he is that he's searching for himself amongst them, or searching for the parts of himself that he sees in them that he really wants to attain. But I think, we're still in the rehearsal process, so there's room for all of that, for sure.
I think it's really fascinating as well that, I hadn't read the book until I'd read the play, so the book became an immediate reference. So I sort of, was coming at the book totally blind, sort of. But because there is such incredible description, it's amazing that there is all of that content, and yet it offers even more springboards to think about lots of other things. It's like, it doesn't feel finite. Like, it feels like that you're still looking for more things. There's always so many things to think about. It kind of feels
in rehearsal.
It feels endless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, there's one great description of Malcolm in the book of him having incredibly long arms. No, but seriously, there's something to think about. You get to a place in a rehearsal when you're really enjoying the work that you're doing, or really trusting each other to do what the text allows you to do, but also what feels right. And every now and again, you have a thought that goes, remember those long arms, So yeah, I mean, I think we're all still finding things, but tics or any specific things, I guess, yeah, it's all a process of elimination.
Yeah. And I must ask, had anybody read the book before they were cast in the play?
Yes,
You had?
Yeah, back in 2015. The first 100 pages I really remember, just because I was so surprised by how insidiously it had acted on me. Suddenly, after about 100 pages, I was like, oh God, they feel really real. Suddenly, and it's in the matter of just a few chapters, and suddenly you're they've sunk into you a little bit. Yeah, it's like they're real people.
And then when you finish and you're out, and that's what everyone says, is why does it have to end?
Yeah, I want to stay with them.
Oh,
yeah. But I really remember that from those little, there's just a few chapters at the beginning. And then obviously, as I went on, then what happens. But that's what I really remember.
I remember as well almost feeling trapped in the novel. I didn't want to put it down, and I almost couldn't escape even when I did stop reading, because I was still thinking about these characters.
That's right, yeah. Well, and there's something about it that's unignorable. I think one of the things that, Hanya, you said on the first day, actually, which I really remember, is that you wanted to write something hot as in emotionally hot, and like it's just sort of like that you can't be indifferent to, and you know that you'd got grown a bit tired of books that were clever and like smart and witty, but actually this is just like it just hits you, you know, and then it just lodges itself in your brain, I think, in a way that, and then it's sort of compulsive reading, and then suddenly you've finished it, you know.
One person wanted to know, who's asked a question, how are you two working on developing the relationship, which is so central to the book?
The short answer is I don't really know. As in, like, I think it just happens. And actually, it's interesting with this particular process because, as we said earlier, we're stepping into a shape that already exists. So we're not doing lots of discussing. We're not doing lots of, we just jump in, switch our brains off, and jump in, really. But fundamentally, I've really enjoyed the fact that we haven't really talked about it. Like we're just sort of, by virtue of, I think like lines and runs generally like work as sort of like spells. Or, do you know what I mean? Like you just, the more you repeat, the more you do them, just stuff happens. And you're not really aware of what's going on and what's being rearranged in your brain and in your heart or whatever. And then you just end up with a relationship suddenly.
You do, and it's like a Rumpelstiltskin, if you give it a name, it kind of loses its power almost. You just, for a while, you're trying to work out what the hell to do with your arms and legs and speaking at the same time. It's like,
especially if you've got long arms.
Shouldn't ever have said that. Yes,
it's I was going to say, it's the mad thing about our job is that you have to, if you're going to do the work well and to its sort of biggest potential, you do have to allow yourself to be entirely open on that first day and allow yourself to fall in some kind of love or whatever. You sort of, on one level, we're replicating Jude and Willem and trying and harnessing your incredible book, but on the other hand, we're just trying very quickly, from the moment we meet on that first day and have coffee, because we didn't know each other before, to be as open as possible with each other. And I just, hope that he likes me. and that we can take this within a controlled environment, because this is a workspace, but we take it to its, most intense and intimate space, both on stage and off,
One of the things I've learned from this process so far is how little we might need to discuss things, actually how, if you're sort of half in, half out as an actor, it's a bit of a difficult dance. But actually, if you've got someone like Ivo at the helm, and you know that if he tells you to do something, you should probably do it because it's probably the best idea. Then that means you can just do the best thing to do as an actor, I think, which is to switch your brain off and just jump in.
And it makes it more intimate because it's private. It's between each person. Right. Ivo, it's quite a specific process. Most theatre directors like to start with what's called table work, where you sit around a table, endless cups of coffee and cakes, and you just talk. And you build the sort of emotional, private, quiet, internal journey of these characters, and then you put it on its feet. So the colour comes before the infrastructure. He likes to sort of build the climbing frame, and then later on say, go and play. And so and actually you don't really get to sort of do any of the discussion with him about any of the internal journey. So what you do discover is very private, and in line with what you said, it's a very quiet, intimate dance, whatever it is. It's very cool. We're going to come in tomorrow, we're going to be like, oh. That was a bit intense, wasn't it? The night after.
But talking about intimacy in the audience, there will be members of the audience sitting actually on the stage. I mean, Elliot, if I ask you first of all, how does that affect your performance as an actor? Are you much more conscious if you've got people behind you, say?
No, I mean, there will be a responsibility to every member of the audience, wherever they're sat, to deliver this a sort of an equal and democratic distribution of the story. We have people, we're sort of in a traverse or promenade, aren't we, with people behind us and in front of us. And I think there are opportunities to work that as an actor. You've got an eye on somebody there or over your shoulder. You're going to be excited from the minute you come in and smell the space and hear it and see it. You couldn't do it in any other medium. This is pure theatre.
I was going to say the stage seating is really a great externalization of what it means to be a reader of this book. I mean, sometimes the reader is a voyeur, and sometimes the reader is a witness, and sometimes the reader is the only company Jude has. It's sometimes very claustrophobic, and the actors never, James will never be off stage. It's almost like they're in a terrarium, something that's constantly living and changing and growing and decaying at the same time. And it really has that effect.
It's very live, you know, things are being cooked and there are smells, and they are very up close and personal. Those people on stage, they're on stage, and we will be aware of them. We can't not be aware of them because we will see them, you know, in their
There's a
eyes.
reality to it as well as a theatricality to it. I think you could look at it and think that is real, happening in front of us, hopefully in the way we look at, behave with each other, but also some of the physical effects, but also there's something completely unreal and dreamlike about it. So
there's always something happening on stage, but maybe in some of the slightly calmer moments, or some of the moments where there's more time that's being allowed for those things to happen, there are audience members beyond and out in the proscenium that are looking at audience members watching what's going on. So that's a whole other element of being able to see the action through someone else seeing the action. And I wonder what that does. Because it's twofold. It's the people that are in the audience on stage watching what's going on, seeing it being reflected in other people's faces, and then vice versa. And
watching them, how they respond.
Yeah,
you know, if they,
And therefore sort of asking the question, therefore, of saying, you know, are you comfortable being a witness to this? Are you going to do anything about it? Are you going to step up and stop this and try it, you know?
So somebody would like to know, this is for the boys, James, Omari, Luke and Zach, what song would you assign to your character?
Well, I mean, Jude sings twice in the play. It's a gift. It's a leader written by Marla. Is it Zubin, help me here. Is it Kirkant?
Rukut leader.
Rukut
From
leader.
the Rukut
Number
leader.
3, the third Rukut leader. And it's and he sings it as a gift to Harold. Which in the book, it's a beautiful scene. He records it on a disc and hides it in the books, and then Harold and Julia find it much later on. In our production, I am actually going to sing it to Harold.
Very beautifully.
I mean, he's very sweet.
supportive father, isn't he?
He's a very supportive father, yeah. But it's a very beautiful song, and we discuss what it means and how it has different interpretations. And for Jude, it means something quite specific about escape and sanctuary and sort of leaving the world, but not as an escape, more as a discovery, hiding and kind of protecting himself.
So there's some staggering music in the show. Like staggering music choices that I didn't know about. You know, if you don't know it's going to happen, and you're doing a moment, and then suddenly this music swells out of nowhere, and you don't know when it's going to come. And there are a couple of moments like that where there are tracks that I sort of think, whoa, this is amazing.
Film
Yeah.
What about you guys? Have you got a song for your characters?
I mean, one thing that I tend to do when I'm sort of trying to build something is I sort of listen to music, not to decide whether it's kind of that's the music that the person likes, but just as an extra sense of just something to sort of find yourself in a world. I found myself listening to a lot of Kendrick Lamar recently, who's not someone that I listen to, but just for the world of like what I'm exploring, I've just found myself like in that avenue, and lots of other things too. But yeah, maybe him. However, I'm not going to rap, so.
you got in there. Yeah. We've just heard that the play is going to be extended for another 5 weeks. Amazing news. How excited are you?
Very excited. I think it's an amazing privilege to be in something that is going to continue, that people really want to see.
The show's sold out so quickly, and there's so many people, you know, been inundated with ticket requests and whatever.
It feels pretty unprecedented considering where the whole industry was a couple of years ago, and that we're sort of here, and it's just been a sellout straight away, which is crazy, but yeah.
It's scary though.
It's scary.
But in a good way.
Exactly, full circle back to that first question. We feel this immense responsibility with this incredible book, and but it's a wonderful, wonderful responsibility to carry.
And a privilege.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you to everyone who sent us questions. Thank you to the cast and company of A Little Life, and most of all, thank you for joining us. From all of us, bye-bye.